Have you ever stood on the edge of your promise? Finally, after years of wilderness and waiting, only to come face to face with a wall? A wall so high, so thick, so fortified that all the hope that brought you there seems to evaporate. The obstacle standing between you and your destiny seems, humanly, insurmountable. You have God's promise, but the enemy holds possession of the land. Now what? This was the exact situation of the people of Israel. After 40 years in the desert, they finally crossed the Jordan River. They were in the Promised Land, but right at the entrance, like a giant padlock on the door of their inheritance, stood the city of Jericho, one of the oldest and most well-fortified cities in the ancient world. Its walls were legendary, so wide that it was said chariots could race on them. And God approaches Joshua, the new leader, and gives him the most bizarre battle strategy in military history. No battering rams, no catapults, no ladders. The order was, march around the city once a day for 6 days, in silence. And on the 7th day, march around 7 times, and then shout. Why would God choose a plan that seemed like madness? What is the secret hidden in 7 days of silence and a single shout of faith? This message is for you who are facing your Jericho, the wall of debt that seems unpayable, the wall of an illness that doctors cannot bring down, the wall of an addiction that imprisons you, the wall of a family conflict that seems unsolvable. God's strategy for Jericho is not just a fascinating story. It is a manual for spiritual warfare. It is the revelation of how God fights our battles when we let go of our own strategies and obey His, no matter how strange they may seem. By the end of this journey, we will march with Israel, feel the tension of each silent lap, and discover the principle of power behind the final shout, a principle you can apply today to see the walls in your own life begin to crumble. Brothers and sisters, prepare your hearts and put on your spiritual sandals. We are going to the plains of Jericho. We are going to learn to silence our own voices so that we can, at the right time, shout with the voice of faith that brings down strongholds. Stay with me, because your greatest victory may be 7 days of obedience away. The ordinary world of the people of Israel was a mix of euphoria and dread. The euphoria of finally having crossed the Jordan, a miracle in itself, but the dread of looking up and seeing Jericho. The spies, 40 years earlier, had spoken of cities great and fortified up to heaven. Now, the entire nation saw it with their own eyes. Their world was the camp, in the shadow of that enemy fortress. Every sunrise revealed the same image of impossibility. They had God's promise, but the enemy had the walls. And the question in the heart of every warrior must have been, how? The disciples in the boat, with Jesus asleep, facing the storm. Their ordinary world was the routine of fishing, but now, the reality of the storm was greater than their experience, and the power that could save them was, apparently, sleeping. What is the shadow of the wall that hangs over your life today? What is the obstacle you see every day that reminds you of your own inadequacy? The call to adventure comes through a supernatural encounter. Joshua is near Jericho, probably inspecting, planning, worried. And suddenly, a man appears before him with a drawn sword. Joshua, the courageous leader, confronts him. Are you for us or for our adversaries? And the answer defines the entire battle that will follow, no. But I am the commander of the army of the Lord. Now I have come. And Joshua fell on his face to the earth and worshipped. The call to adventure is not a human battle plan. It is the revelation that the commander-in-chief is already on the field. The adventure would be to follow the orders, not of an earthly general, but of the captain of the heavenly host himself. Example of Moses and the burning bush. His call came through an encounter with the presence of God, who commissioned him and gave him the plan to deliver Israel. The divine encounter always precedes the impossible mission. Before you fight your battles, you need to meet the commander. If you submit to the leadership of Jesus in your life, Comment, Lord of hosts, I surrender to you. The refusal here is the internal battle against logic. The commander gives the plan to Joshua, and it is an absurd plan. March once a day, in silence, with the priests blowing trumpets, for 6 days. On the 7th, march 7 times and then shout. Where were the tactics? Where was the military engineering? Every fiber of Joshua's being, an experienced military leader, must have refused to accept this. How would he explain this to his generals? How would he maintain the morale of an army with a plan that would expose them to the ridicule of the enemies watching from the walls above? Jesus' command to Peter to let down the nets in deep water after a night of failed fishing. Peter refuses with logic. Master, we toiled all night and took nothing. But then he obeys. The refusal of logic is overcome by faith in the Word. God told me to forgive someone who didn't deserve it. Logic screamed, that's unfair. You'll look like a fool. My mind refused to accept it. It took me a while to understand that obedience to God is above my logic. The master, the wisdom, the center of the entire strategy was not the march or the shout. It was the Ark of the Covenant. The order specified, 7 priests shall bear 7 trumpets of ram's horns before the ark. The ark represented the manifest presence of God. It went ahead. The master guiding them was not Joshua, but the King of Glory himself enthroned upon the ark. The lesson was clear. The presence of God is our greatest weapon. Where he goes, we go. The focus was not on the wall. It was on the ark, the crossing of the Jordan. The ark was what stopped the waters. The priests carrying it had to take the first step of faith into the water. The presence of God, when followed in obedience, always opens the way. Seeking the presence of God is more important than fighting the problem. If you commit to putting His presence first, follow this channel and comment, "Your presence is my delight." They cross the threshold. The first day, Joshua relays the absurd order, and the people obey. Imagine the scene. An entire army, 40,000 men, marching in a deathly silence, broken only by the sound of sandals and the supernatural blast of the trumpets. They make one full circle around the city and return to the camp. The enemy on the walls must have laughed. What is this? A religious parade? This first step of public obedience, of apparent madness, was the crossing of the threshold. They committed to God's plan. Peter's first step out of the boat, walking on water, began with one step. Radical obedience always begins with the first step. Silent obedience in the face of a mocking enemy is a powerful act of faith. Like this video now if you are ready to take your first lap of obedience. The test is now perseverance. Day 2, the same thing. Day 3, the same thing. 6 days of monotonous repetition. The enemy is boredom, discouragement, the voice of doubt that whispers, "This isn't working. Nothing is happening." The ally is the discipline of silence, which kept them from grumbling, from questioning, and forced them to focus on the ark and the sound of the trumpets. The test was whether they could maintain obedience when they saw no apparent results. Naaman's command to dip 7 times in the Jordan. If he had dipped 6 times and given up, he would have remained a leper. The blessing was in persevering until the 7th time. 6 days passed. Not a single crack appeared in the wall. The people's faith was stretched to the limit. What was so special about the 7th day that would change everything? Have you ever given up on something because you didn't see immediate results? The lesson of Jericho is about persevering in obedience, even when nothing seems to be changing. The darkness is the exhaustion and tension of the early morning of the 7th day. And on the 7th day, they rose early, at the dawn of day, and marched around the city in the same manner 7 times. Imagine the physical effort, the mental exhaustion, the tension building with each lap. First lap, nothing. Second, nothing. 6th lap, nothing. The approach of darkness is the final test of endurance before the miracle. It is the moment when you have done almost everything God has commanded, but the wall is still standing. It is the final test of your faith. Jacob's night of wrestling with the angel. He wrestled until the breaking of the day. The blessing came at the end of the night, at the limit of his strength. Don't give up on the last lap. Your victory may be closer than you think. If you commit to persevering to the end, like this video. The ultimate ordeal. The 7th lap is complete. The priests blow the trumpets with a long blast. And Joshua gives the order they had waited 7 days for. Shout, for the Lord has given you the city. The test now is to release the voice. After 7 days of accumulating faith in silence, they need to release it in a unified shout of victory, even before they see the victory. It was not a human war cry. It was a prophetic shout, a shout that agreed with God's promise that the city was already theirs. Jesus' cry on the cross. It is finished. A cry that declared victory over sin and death before the resurrection proved it. What was special about the 7th day was the perfection and fulfillment of God's timing. The 6 days were the preparation, the sanctification of obedience. The 7th day was the day of the release of power, where human action, the shout, aligned with divine action, the miracle. Prepare your voice of faith. Declare aloud, the Lord has given me the victory. The reward is the instantaneous and total miracle. So the people shouted, and the wall fell down flat. The Hebrew text is even more powerful. The wall fell down in its place. It didn't crumble outward or inward. It sank into the ground, creating a perfect ramp for the army to enter. So the people went up into the city, every man straight before him, and they captured the city. The reward for obedience that seemed like madness was a supernatural, undeniable, and complete victory. The miraculous catch of fish. The nets were filled to the point of breaking. The reward for Peter's obedience was an abundance that surpassed all his expectations. God rewards obedience with victories that surpass our logic. If you believe in the miracles of God, comment, "The walls are falling." The road back is the execution of the second part of God's command. The wall fell, but the city needed to be taken. And there were clear instructions. Everything in the city was to be devoted to the Lord for destruction, as a judgment on idolatry. The exception was Rahab, the prostitute who hid the spies, and her family. And all the gold, silver, and bronze were to be consecrated to the treasury of the Lord. The road back is obedience in the details, even after the great victory. God's command to Saul regarding the Amalekites. He won the battle but disobeyed in the details, sparing the king and the best of the flock. This disobedience cost him the kingdom. Complete victory requires complete obedience. The resurrection is the establishment of Israel's authority in the promised land. Jericho was not just a city. It was a spiritual stronghold of idolatry. By destroying it, Israel not only conquered territory, they established the lordship of the living God in the land. The nation, which was born in the promise to Abraham and formed in slavery and the wilderness, now resurrects as a victorious military and spiritual force. Their fame spread, and the fear of God fell upon the other kings. The resurrection of Christ. It was not just a personal victory. It was a victory that established his authority over every principality and power, and gave us the basis for our own victory. The tool, the revelation that Jericho gives us, is the divine strategy of faith. It's a two-part process. Part 1, the silent march. It is our daily perseverance in obedience, even when we see nothing happening. It is our walking by faith and not by sight. It is the discipline of silencing doubt and focusing on the presence of God. Part 2, the shout of faith. It is the moment when, having persevered in obedience, we release a prophetic declaration of victory based on God's promise. Silence of perseverance plus the shout of faith is the formula that brings down walls. The Great Commission. Go, the march of perseverance, and teach, the shout of proclamation. The same strategy for conquering the nations for Christ. What is your Jericho? Identify it. Name it. Now, ask God, Lord, what is my marching strategy? What is the silent, persistent obedience you are asking of me? Maybe it's forgiving 70 times 7. Maybe it's faithfully giving your tithe even when money is tight. Maybe it's reading His Word every day. Start marching. Ignore the enemy's taunts. Ignore the monotony. Focus on the presence of God, and the seventh day will come. The day when God will tell you, now, shout. Not a shout of despair, but a shout of praise. A shout that declares, it is done. The victory is mine. The Lord has given me the city. The power is not in the volume of your voice, but in the faith behind your voice. Your shout of praise is the weapon that releases God's power for Him to bring down the wall Himself. The battle for your Jericho is not yours. It is the Lord's. Your part is to obey His strategy. Start your silent march today and prepare for the day of your victory shout. The walls will fall. If you are ready to march in obedience and see your walls fall, subscribe to this channel now and turn on the bell. We will strengthen you for the battle. We all know someone who is facing an insurmountable wall. Be the priest who blows the trumpet of hope for them. Share this video and declare the fate of your wall by commenting with all your faith. #my wall will fall. By faith, the walls of Jericho fell down after they had been encircled for 7 days. Hebrews 11:30.